More and more Floridians are getting the COVID vaccine. I caught up with State House Speaker Chris Sprowls to talk about distribution efforts, Florida's economic recovery, and how he says the state is helping protect businesses from lawsuits during the pandemic. Speaker Sprowls, thank you so much for joining us here on NBC6 Impact.
Hey, Jackie, great to be with you.
COVID numbers are decreasing and there are more outlets for people to get vaccinated. So are you satisfied with how distribution is going in the state?
I think it's going great. I think the healthcare workers and the vaccine sites are doing a large part a great job. As you said, the death number has gone down. Vaccines are going up. The state has prioritized our senior population. And after prioritizing our seniors, now we're focused on our elderly and our folks who are most vulnerable. So I'm pleased that we've passed 3 million people in the state who've been vaccinated. I'm very pleased with how that's going.
And how has the addition of the FEMA sites helped?
Yeah, I think that the FEMA sites have opened it up, which is helpful. We've had a couple of glitches, which, your station did a great job of covering, where folks were deviating from the executive order that Governor DeSantis had put in that prioritizes our seniors and prioritizes our most vulnerable. But I think that is being corrected by FEMA. So it seems like everybody's working together. And the idea here is whether you're at a FEMA site, whether you're at a Department of Health, whether you're at a Publix or a Walgreens or somewhere else, that people have access to the vaccine and that everybody who wants one will be able to get one.
In retrospect, as we get more and more people vaccinated, was it the right move for the governor to reject some of the harsher lockdowns that other states like California and New York imposed?
Absolutely. Look, the verdict is in on that. The governor came out of it earlier, and let's break that down a little bit. Look at the problems of economic recovery that's happening in states like New York and California where they've had lockdowns. California has a Disney, so do we. Our Disney's been open, people have been going, commerce has commenced, the economy is recovering, our unemployment numbers are going down. We have kids that are back in school that aren't going to have the losses and learning gains that other states have had. There's no intellectual honesty that could argue anything other than the fact that the decisions that Governor DeSantis has made to reopen our state, to get our businesses back open, to get our kids back in school, are going to help us on a road to economic recovery. And yet we still beat those states when it comes to our folks who, have not contracted the virus. So I commend him and his leadership. And if you recall, Jackie, that was a really tough decision. And at the time, the governor took a lot of slack in doing it, but his leadership has carried the day.
And on the issue of data privacy, the Florida legislature has been focused on foreign interference in universities and research institutions in the state. What was found?
Yeah, thanks for asking. We opened up an investigation here in the House last year on that. Moffitt Cancer Center, the CEO, the vice president of research, and some other researchers were found to have secret bank accounts in China, secret relationships, shadow laboratories. The University of Florida had 4 researchers engaged in inappropriate conduct with China, one of whom was recently indicted by the federal government, a researcher who was working in artificial intelligence. And at the University of Central Florida, there was a researcher who was found to have an inappropriate, undisclosed relationship with the Chinese Communist Party, fled. Later, that researcher was found to have been working on autonomous submarine parts. Their research assistant was later captured by the federal government and indicted for exporting those submarine parts back to China. So this is not something that's in the newspaper every day or on the news, but it is a pervasive problem throughout the country and here in Florida. And the Florida legislature, with our partnerships in the Senate and Governor DeSantis, have now rolled out the most aggressive legislation in America from a state on combating foreign interference and theft of our intellectual property.
How do you think that will trickle down to other states?
Oh, I think it's going to catch fire. I mean, the reality is that most of these institutions that are being infiltrated are institutions that are overseen, that are funded by the state government. So I think many of these institutions weren't doing the kinds of things that they would have been doing, like, cooperating with the FBI and making sure they were vetting foreign researchers and people who had access to sensitive information. Now the state, for the first time, is demanding that level of accountability from our research institutions. I've had folks from the federal government who've reached out, who are in the intelligence and the FBI community, who thanked us for the work that we're doing because they didn't have access the way that they should.
And how can you enforce that?
Absolutely. Well, we're going to make them report their vetting process. We're going to make them report, I'll give you one example. Right now, if somebody donates, $150,000 and they are an agent of the Communist Party, or they are the Chinese government, or they're the Syrian government, or they're Iran, and that goes to a foundation at a university, that does not need to be reported. Under this law, that changes forever. We say, over a certain amount has to be reported publicly to the state of Florida so that we know who is trying to influence our universities. that researchers have to be properly vetted, that there has to be rules and accountability, that there can't be these inappropriate contracts. When I say contracts, there's this 1,000 Talents program that was an active recruiting machine here in the state of Florida that was trying to recruit our best and our brightest to have these inappropriate relationships with China, where they would actually make trips to China and have shadow laboratories that were completely undisclosed to Florida taxpayers and do research there that could be the benefit not of our people and of American economy, but of the Chinese economy. That ends under this bill.
Okay, I want to talk about the environment because you presented the Always Ready Flooding and Sea Level Rise Mitigation Bill. How will this build a more resilient Florida, and what does it entail?
Well, Demi Busada Cabrera, who's a new House member from Miami-Dade, is well aware of the issues that we're having statewide with resiliency and flooding. This will be the most robust plan in the history of the state of Florida to tackle sea level rise and coastal flooding. It creates a program that's a partnership between local governments and the state. We're going to invest $100 million and develop a real thought out plan about what the projects are that we need to do statewide to protect our coast, to help lower property insurance for our residents, and to adequately prepare for sea level rise. This plan allows us to do that and to plan for the future, Jackie, which, when it comes to coastal flooding and sea level rise, is not something we've done before. We do it in transportation in the Department of Transportation work plan, but it's never happened in the environmental space the way it's going to happen under this bill.
So you talk about $100 million. What specifically would that money go to?
Specifically to those projects. So a local government, for example, in Miami, they could say, well, we need some help with, Biscayne Bay and some of the projects around there dealing with, coastal flooding. And we could then engage and say, okay, we think that's a valuable project. It's gone through the vetting process. And then we as the legislature, we appropriate the $100 million and begin to construct and or fund these particular projects that will mitigate coastal flooding. And as you know, that could be something as much as some sort of artificial barrier. It could be a barrier island. There's lots of different ways in order to mitigate the risk of flooding to our communities. Every single community is different. Every single one of our risks are different. And this allows us to be specifically tailored to the needs of that community.
If I could go back to COVID for a moment and the economy, because the Florida House passed HB 7, which ensures that only legitimate COVID claims can be brought against businesses and schools, nonprofits, and churches in Florida. What can you tell us about that?
Well, look, this is the most aggressive COVID liability protection bill in America that's been rolled out by a legislature. And the idea was this: our business owners were taken off guard. Someone who runs a hardware store or a dry cleaner or a restaurant, they weren't prepared to deal with the impacts of the pandemic. So what we've done is basically say, if you were a good actor, if you tried to protect your employees as best you could, try to follow guidance from the government, if you tried to do those kinds of things that we would expect people to do, you're going to be protected. There won't be kind of a frivolous lawsuit where you have to go out and hire a lawyer just to have a judge dismiss the frivolous case. You're going to be protected by the law. And it has a path where if somebody was truly a bad actor, then that person would be able to, to be sued and to have that go through the court process. This is to protect, the vast majority of our businesses who have done everything that they can to stay open and to protect their employees and to protect their customers.
And the governor has supported the legislature on the issue?
The governor's been a great partner on it. Senate President Simpson and I have worked closely together. The House sponsor, Representative McClure, had the bill on the floor this past week and did an excellent job answering the questions from the members. But I think this is going to be an unbelievable comfort, Jackie, to business owners across the state. If you're to walk into any random pizza place in Miami and say, are you worried about being sued as it relates to the pandemic? Chances are they're going to say yes. There's a great fear right now among the business community that they are vulnerable for something that, they never got in business to protect themselves against a pandemic. They've had to learn, like we've all had, on the fly. This bill gives them some comfort and some predictability as they move forward.
And finally, I want to talk about the unemployment system, which has been problematic in the past. What can be done to improve the state's system?
Well, when we talk about the actual, system itself, we have the Connect system, then we have the Employ Florida where people look for jobs. One of the criticisms I've always had, in addition to, of course, the problems we had during the pandemic and the delays, is that our systems don't necessarily work in tandem together. We have all these entryways, one site where someone goes and says that they need unemployment, another one to go look for a job. These sites should be working together. Other states have them working together. They have higher traffic per capita than we do here in Florida. So we've made it a priority this session in the Florida House to tackle both that issue as well as our statewide workforce system, which I've long been been critical of because they have forgotten how to get people work. And what we're focused on here is reemployment, getting people back to work, and making sure that people have the job skills, whether that's a rapid credential or it's an associate's degree or it's a bachelor's degree, whatever it is, to make sure that they have meaningful work in their communities where they can provide for themselves and provide for their family.
Speaker Sprowls, thank you so much once again for joining us.
Thanks, Jackie. Great being with you.